Addressing refugee issues, people are talking about a lot of issues around economy, social, refugee security, refugee rights. But for us, it's more of dignity, just to uphold the dignity of a human being. Because whether you come from a southern globe, whether you come from the north, whether you come from the Asia side, whether you come from the,
any part of the world.
Yeah, the extreme end, you are a human. So we have to first look at you from that component as a human being. Refugees are not getting any money from anyone. There's this notion that refugees are being funded by the United Nations. No, that is a lie. The government should up its game in terms of providing, refugee IDs. These are the many documents that refugees are supposed to be having. The government should fast track that so that at the end of the day, we enable refugees resiliency. We enable refugees to take part freely in our economic and social activities without them experiencing whatever they're experiencing currently. So I would like to urge the government that we need to, bolster those interventions.
How are you, my friend?
I'm fine, thank you, Museveni.
Yes.
I'm glad to be here today.
Yes.
That I'm being hosted by BORTOPRA TV. And I'm hoping that we will delve deep into the refugee conversations and unpack the realities of refugee existence in Kenya. And see how we can mainstream this conversation and even enable understanding of our people in regards to refugee matters.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
so you can start maybe by introducing yourself to our viewers.
Right.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you. My name is Abondo Evans. They also know me as Waziri. I'm from Pamoja Trust as a program officer in Pamoja Trust. So Pamoja Trust is a civil society organization that works around access to basic services, access to justice, and we work mostly within the informal settlements of Kenya, in the big cities of Kenya, that is Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, and by far, and of course was in Gishu, and then of course also in Turkana. In some of the components we do as an organization. But basically and mostly our work is around access to justice. And then apart from access to justice is, of course, the issues around social and economic rights for informal communities within Kenya, just to see how communities can be part of the development agenda, but again also having community voices in policy making processes, and of course in government programmatic interventions. So that is it as Evans. That is what we do as an organization. But again, now in Nairobi, we specifically have conversations and a lot of interventions around refugee and refugee rights. Thanks to the Constitution of Kenya and the newly enacted laws around refugees. So then, if we being refugees, being people within the urban fabric, we really champion for their inclusion, of course, their socio-economic rights, and basically human rights for the refugee fraternity in Nairobi and Kenya at large.
I have known a new name, Waziri. Waziri is we know Waziri here in Kenya, what it means. Are you Waziri, the real Waziri, or where the name came from?
So Waziri is, in English, it's a minister.
Okay.
Currently, I'm not a minister yet, but I'm an aspiring minister for internal affairs and, of course, for foreign issues. But again, the name derives from the urge for us to just have different thoughts in terms of even how we drive our ministerials and how we drive our secretariat as a Kenya, as a nation.
Yes.
But again, I'm really looking forward to that time when I'll be a Waziri.
So you started very early to prophesy for your
of course,
your journey as Waziri.
Yeah, of course, you have to be optimistic in this world, and you have to think big.
Yeah. Obviously, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Evans, before we proceed to the topic of today, how long have Pamoja Trust have been working with refugees?
So Pamoja Trust, currently, Pamoja Trust has been working with refugees for, it's now we are headed to the 5th year. And it came by as a result of the kind of discrimination we see refugees going through. the kind of inhumane conditions refugees are living in within Nairobi.
Yes.
And also, of course, the kind of exclusion we are seeing when it comes to refugee matters within the Nairobi fabric. For us, it's not about refugees and it's not about all those components, but for us as an entity, it's about human dignity.
Yes.
So when we are approaching the refugee agenda, that is the first concern that comes to our head, and that is the first area that we feel should come out. Because people, when addressing refugee issues, people are talking about a lot of issues around economy, social, refugee security, refugee rights. But for us, it's more of dignity, just to uphold the dignity of a human being. Because whether you come from southern globe, whether you come from the north, whether you come from the Asia side, whether you come from the,
any part of the world.
Yeah, the extreme end, you are a human. So we have to first look at you from that component as a human being before we even start addressing these other issues. So Pamoja Trust has been in this sector for 4.5 years now, and we're really glad to be part of these conversations and part of these interventions, because now it makes us and even the people around us, our constituents, realize that this is a new component altogether, but it's something that it's really should be driven and should be given a lot of emphasis. Yeah.
So thank you so much for the work you are doing. I have been in different forums that you have organized.
Sure.
I know the work you are doing for humanity.
Okay.
So I appreciate so much.
Thank you.
So then I'd like to ask you, what is your view regarding refugees ecosystem? Do you think refugees are getting information, or they need a platform such like this BORTOPRA TV to have more discussions, not even refugees, to have informations, not only refugees, even the host. They have negative perceptions, and they need to acquire the right information. Do you think how things are going on that perspective of accessing information, we are good on that, or there's something that can be done?
So first things first, number one, there's little to no platforms for people to have these conversations. And that is the first thing that we're really emphasizing on. That you see, refugees are here with us, and they're amounting to, like currently Kenya, for instance, we are hosting a whooping 628,000 refugees in Kenya. But now it's hard to realize that these conversations only take place once a year during the World Refugee Day, which happened yesterday.
Yes.
And we can't put humans' life, we can't address human issues and discrimination, inequity. We can't address it once every year. And it's a very sad state to realize that even our media are not really giving these refugee conversations a lot of, concentration, a lot of light on it. They're not really, giving these platforms for people to just engage and make us understand about, refugee issues in Kenya.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, no. First, we have little to no platforms for refugees to air out issues and even discuss the refugee plights within these formal settlements and informal settlements. But again, there's so much misinformation here outside that really needs to be, unlearned and really needs to be unpacked, so that the fraternity, that's the host community, even in Kenya, to understand exactly what a refugee is, what are the challenges that refugees go through, what are the issues that we need to take into consideration, what are the special circumstances that refugees are going through, because refugees are going through a lot, even when they live with us within these settlements, within the urban fabric.
Yes.
But the host community do not really get to understand, do not really get the gist of refugee issues. Refugees themselves also are really not coming out to also seek this information. And if at all they're trying to seek this information, then that platform is not there for them. There are no people who are out there to provide that information for them. For instance, if you do your analysis on the Refugee Act 2021, you realize that a big number of refugees do not understand, have never even encountered the document, have not engaged with the document at all. So then it becomes hard for them, and even people like us who are championing for their rights, to even foster the whatever components that the Refugee Act is trying to address. Yeah. So then there's so much information. Refugees do not have those platforms where they get this information. And you can only be bold to even engage within these communities if you know the rights that are bestowed upon you, if you know that you actually have that freedom to even engage in such conversations. But now the fact that they do not have access to these documents, they do not understand the policy spaces in Kenya, then it becomes hard for them to integrate and take part in the community conversations we are having. Yeah.
So, dear viewers, I would like to remind you that we have Evans from Pamoja Trust, and today we unpacked a lot so that you may know more about the Refugee Act and rights and also obligations, because where there is a right, also there is an obligation aside. And also, if you want to interact with us, please, you can go in the comment section and write your comment. Then from there, you'll be interacting with us. And also say anything about the question I have asked. If do Liri refugee access information, or if they need to be done, then there should be anything to be done so that they can have platforms where they discuss. But we are here as BORTOPRA Television. We have started a journey because we saw that the lack, and we say let's put our contribution on this aspect so that refugees may access information. Now we are speaking in English, but I believe also we'll be having segment in Swahili, because here in Kenya, the languages that are lugha ya taifa it's Swahili and English. Maybe I know there are people from refugees that are coming from different parts of Africa. We cannot maybe speak or converse in your mother tongue, but you will bear with us. And also I would like to encourage refugees to learn Swahili or English, because if you don't, I know the language barrier is a problem, but you have to work on it until you can just be listening and watching this segment so that you can acquire information. Evans, let's go then into the topic for today. You've said the awareness of Refugee Act was or is still low. There are many refugees who don't know even what the act is, what it says, because there was no space for discussion so that we can enlighten the people who deserve to know that act. So, can you brief about the Refugee Act?
Okay, thank you so much, Museveni. So the Refugee Act is a huge document, but I'll wish to narrow in on the specific segments that really are significant to this conversation today. But again, before I do that, I also want to put it out there on the very also other significant issues within the Refugee Act. And first of all, the Act talks of profoundly the directorate in charge of refugee affairs, the government departments that are supposed to handle refugee issues, even breaking it down to the specific committees within this particular department. And it also gives the guidelines on the processes of even attaining the refugee status. It gives guidelines on the process of someone being declared a refugee from the time they get into the border. But again, also the document also mentions about the specific refugee rights that are bestowed upon them in Kenya, and also the obligations that refugees have when they are within this the boundary of Kenya. So I would like to mention that the Refugee Act of 2021 puts it out there, the department, which of course currently known as the Department of Refugee Affairs, which is under the Ministry of Internal Affairs, headed by Kindiki currently. So apart from that, it also mentions some of the committees that are mandated to just ensure refugee issues are handled keenly and refugee issues are also addressed. And that's give us the three entities within Kenya envisioned within the Act. And the first one is the committee on the appeals committee. And this appeals committee is basically to look into. First, the first committee is actually the committee that governs refugee issues and gives a proposal on how refugee issues could be handled. They are the ones that fast track whatever emerging concerns on refugees. They are the controlling, of course, the population, controlling refugee affairs in Kenya. But again, there's the appeals committee that is in charge of listening to appeals from any asylum seeker whose refugee status has either been withdrawn or has been cancelled. Or they're supposed to either be, deported to their country, or they're supposed to, their refugee application could maybe be cancelled. So the role of this committee is to listen to these appeals that will now decide whether the appeal could be taken into consideration, or whether their status could be restored, or maybe whatever judgment that has been given can be upheld. So,
as I cut you short, it means to be a refugee, you need to be accepted. You have to go for different interviews.
Exactly. There's a process known as a refugee status determination. I don't know whether this is the time for me to unpack that, but there's a process known as a refugee status determination where you apply to be a refugee, because there's a difference between a refugee and asylum seeker.
Okay.
Once you get into Kenya, you are first an asylum seeker. So before you get to be a refugee, you are first an asylum seeker.
So you came to seek a refuge.
Yeah, you are coming to seek asylum first.
Asylum.
Yeah, you come to seek asylum protection. But again, once you've come to seek asylum and the asylum has been given to you, now you apply to be a refugee.
Okay.
So for you to be declared a refugee, there's a process that has to be undertaken. They have to review your status. They have to review the reasons why you are in Kenya. They have to ascertain that you are genuinely in Kenya through whatever means, through the whatever causes that you've mentioned. After they ascertain that, now they declare you a refugee.
Okay.
So once you are declared a refugee, then now you are provided with the necessary refugee identity card.
Okay. So the light and the act we are speaking now, it addresses the refugees, those who have already accepted as refugees, or also it regards also for the asylum seekers.
Okay, the Refugee Act addresses refugee affairs, refugee issues, but there's a component of the asylum seeker.
Okay.
Because you're an asylum seeker, but within the Kenya territory. So you still have to adhere with the various regulations and policies that are addressing anyone that is in Kenya, either an asylum seeker or a refugee. So there are components within the refugee that gives rights to even the asylum seekers and even obligations to the asylum seeker. So the Refugee Act is not discriminating the asylum seeker. It is actually also incorporating asylum seekers in the various articles within the Refugee Act.
Okay.
In the Refugee Act, Part 5. Now is the part that talks about the refugee rights and the obligations. And the first that is very peculiar is that all refugees within Kenya should adhere to the laws within Kenya. That whether you are a refugee or an asylum seeker and you're within the boundary of Kenya, then all the laws within Kenya are something that you have to adhere to. Yeah. Because most of the time someone will be in Kenya and they're like, me, I am a refugee and whatever laws in Kenya do not apply to me. No. The Refugee Act is very specific and very clear that as a refugee and asylum seeker in Kenya, you are obligated and you have that mandate to adhere to all the laws within that governs the Kenyan territory. That is one. And then, of course, secondly, it also recognizes the United Nations the United Nations Convention on Refugee for the 1951 that, of course, gives guidelines on refugee handling and refugee issues. Yeah. But again, it also reflects some of the components in the OAU Convention of 1969 because those two documents speak to each other. So the Refugee Act in that Part 5 recognizes the AU Convention and the OAU Declaration. And then when you go there down, the Refugee Act talks of refugee refugee inclusion in the social and economic activities. So it expanded further to mention that refugees are supposed to be taking part in social and economic activities. It goes further to say that refugees are allowed to take part in, educational activities, skill enhancement processes. Refugees are allowed to do that. Refugees are allowed to, take part in gainful employment activities. Refugees can access, whatever documents that they need. And when you read the Act, when you go down reading the Act, it now elaborates further on what kind of, engagements that refugee could be engaged in. Like, for instance, just to mention, it talks of, the economic and environmental plans. And that whenever the county government or the government in wholesome, whenever it is planning economically and even having environmental interventions, it should put into consideration refugee issues. Because the Act appreciates that we have settlements within the urban fabric, for instance, Kasarani, that accommodates a lot of refugees. So any economic planning and any environmental planning and environmental initiative, because you understand the government does, annual development plans, for instance, the government does a county integrated development plan.
And the budget.
And the budgeting processes, and which I must mention that refugees have taken active role in the budget processes thanks to some of the, capacity building trainings we've had. So the Refugee Act elaborates that whenever the government is developing these, plans, whenever the government is doing its planning economically, whenever the government is doing its budgeting process, it has to take into consideration refugee issues. It has to take into consideration some of the, the issues that refugees are putting across. Their numbers, some of these services that the government is providing. It has to ensure that refugees can equally access these services. So the Refugee Act elaborates further. But again, like the fact that it mentions that refugees have a special circumstance. They are in special circumstances. They have a special circumstance thanks to, the kind of things they have gone through when they are, fleeing from their country of origin. So then it means the Refugee Act appreciates this fact and gives, pushes the government to consider these special factors when addressing refugee issues. And when you go further, it talks of, special consideration to be given to women, children, the old people, and people living with disability. So that is something that the government is also equally obligated to ensure it addresses whenever it is tackling refugee concerns. And then lastly, I also wish to mention that the Refugee Act talks of specific designated places, that there are specific places that the CS, the minister in charge of refugee issues, supposed to identify the designated places, work in collaboration with the county government to ensure that there are specific transit areas, there are specific facilities that provide services to the refugee, and that whenever all this is happening, there should be coordination between the ministry in charge and, of course, the county governments. And it goes further to elaborate that refugees are allowed movement within specific areas that are designated. And then lastly, it also talks of the documents that a refugee should be having, and it elaborates all the 7 documents and the process of getting all these documents. Yeah.
So at least you've tried to elaborate what is in the Refugee Act 2021.
Sure.
For the people, maybe there are people who are not aware of, in brief, what the Act is speaking about or is addressing about. But I want to ask on behalf of the people, or our viewers, what is the difference? What is the difference between Act and law?
Okay. So an act is a form of law. There's no difference. An act is a law.
It's a law.
It's a law that gives regulation. An act is a document that regulates how a specific issue will be conducted, how the government will go about, governing some of these issues that we're talking about.
Yeah.
For instance, we have very many acts. We have a Refugee Act that governs and gives regulations on how refugees are supposed to be handled, where are refugees supposed to stay, how are they supposed to be even identified, what kind of documents will they need. Now it regulates all that processes. So apart from it just mentioning the how, it also mentions the who, and of course the Act also establishes some of these government offices, because if you look, for instance, in the Refugee Act, the Department of Refugee Services is an agency that has been established through the Act.
Okay.
So it is a regulatory document that governs how these processes are going to, to be taken, to be conducted. So we have Refugee Acts, for instance. We have the Water Act. We have the Health Act. We have the Land Act. Yeah, we have quite a number. We have very many acts in Kenya. And they are all laws that we as Kenyans are supposed to embrace and supposed to be guided by.
My next question is asking, do you think things to be on paper or on document, is it enough? Maybe are only refugees who are not aware of the Act, or also the service providers from the government side, are they aware also, so that they can comply with what the Act is addressing?
What I must mention is that in Kenya, of course, we have quite a number of laws, quite a number of papers that regulate our day-to-day works. But again, implementation is always a big challenge that we always have to address. Because it's one thing to develop a paper, but again, it's another thing to implement. Like, for instance, we talk of the Constitution 2010, people still call it the new Constitution, which is a very wrong phrase. It's not new. 10 years is not new. In fact, we are now in the 13th year. But you see, people still call it the new Constitution. Why? It's because a big chunk of the Constitution has not been implemented. A lot of things within the Constitution are still lying bare. Some of things are still floating. We're even not sure, especially when it comes to division of roles between the county government and the national government. So, of course, there's a lot of policy development processes. We are developing a lot of policies. We are developing a lot of regulations as a nation.
Very smart. Very
smart. Of course, Kenyans and, the fraternity, we are very brilliant in terms of paper development. And, But now when it comes to implementation, that's the biggest challenge we have. So Refugee Act, for instance, is a 2021 document. But of course, even before that, there was still another refugee document in the 2016 one that was now redeveloped to have this new Act of 2021. But of course, the implementation is still a problem. So just imagine implementing the Kenya Constitution of 2010 is still a challenge. Now, what about a document that has recently been developed? That is one.
And also, it's for people you maybe don't feel they are your brothers. You can be close to them.
See, exactly.
You see, it's for other people.
You see, exactly. You see, refugee issues are still new to Kenyans. So we're talking of Refugee Act. Of course, the government is aware that, of course, now we have a document. Now we can regulate these people. But that is the government. But what about the people of Kenya? The people of Kenya are not even aware of the Act.
Not even the government. The government, when you say the government, there are different institutions under the government umbrella.
Sure.
But sometimes on the document aspect, as you said, the Act addresses all the different documents a refugee acquire, but you go to some institutions, it's like it's new for them, and they are part of the government.
Exactly. You see, that is the paradox that we have with this, Kenyan government of ours. One thing that I must mention is that, of course, our departments in the government usually work a lot in isolation. Every person for himself, every department is doing their own thing. Then they maybe sometimes meet later when now it's about budgeting and all that. But most of the time, our departments in government work in isolation. So the Refugee Act is best known by the Refugee Department for Refugee Services. But you'll get to understand that even within the Ministry of Internal Affairs, there are departments within the ministry that are not even cognizant to whatever the Act is talking about. So only the staffs in DRS are the ones who might be knowing. So it's only the staffs, and of course it's the stakeholder bodies that are working on refugees like us, or maybe some of a few people that are interested on matters refugee, and those maybe that live with refugees on a day-to-day basis. But now, apart from the people I've mentioned, a big percent of the Kenyan population
they are not aware.
Are not even aware of the existence of the document, let alone
including refugees also.
Including refugees, because you see, the government has not taken a deliberate action to sensitize refugees on the Refugee Act. They developed it; it's now on our shelves, and of course, the few people who want to refer to it can go and refer to it. But now the people who are concerned and whose lives are being touched directly by the Refugee Act are not even aware of the existence of the Act, let alone the components within the Act. So then I think the government needs to pick it up and have a lot of civic awareness among the refugees for them to even understand what the Refugee Act talks about, the components of the Refugee Act. And this one cannot be done once in a year. No, we have to have various programs on a daily basis just to ensure that refugees understand this thing. So whenever we arrest a refugee, at least we can say, we've arrested you, you have intentionally ignored the Act, and that you've intentionally decided not to follow the Act. But as at now, I think that is not fair to the refugees, because they even don't know whether the document exists. Only say for a few.
So there should be a lot of awareness,
civic
awareness, so that people in the community, even people from the institutions, or unless they know about the Act, or they ignore. Sometimes you are arrested by police, and the police is part of the government, but because of your paper and whatever, refugees have different documents.
I think people do not ignore. People are not even aware. Okay. In our interventions in Pamoja Trust, we engage government officials, we engage the police, these law enforcement officers. And believe me, even these people we call the Kanjo, the local askaris, are not even aware that Refugee Act exists. So it's not even about ignoring. It's about they are not aware completely. Police, if you take a refugee to a police station, a lot of questions. So who is this person? How am I supposed to even address? Where are we supposed to arrest them? Do they even have a right? So they're even not aware whether there's a Refugee Act. So a lot of sensitization needs to be made.
There is a very big gap, and that's why BORTOPRA Television we have come just to play a role. I know maybe we may not reach thousands of people, but at least change a person at a time.
Yeah, sure.
Dear BORTOPRA viewers, this is BORTOPRA TV, where refugee matters are discussed and providing solutions. We discuss problems and we provide solutions. So my name is Eric as the host, and Evans is the guest, where we are talking or conversing about Refugee Act and refugee rights here in Kenya. You've talked about the social and economic integration, if I can say. On social aspect, I can say, according to my experience, how I see refugees living with the hosts, common mwananchi, as Kenyan says, I don't see any problem, because they are living together as brothers and sisters. They have accommodated the refugees. On social level, and even also we do say integration. But here down, I don't see a big deal. But the problem where the integration should be, it's on the systems, or the government systems, and also service providers. That's where integration, they should accommodate and also understand refugees. There should no more be talking much or have nice documents, but without the will to implement them. So according to the social, I don't want to, we talk about it. Let's talk about economic. Okay. Do you think refugees economically are accepted here in Kenya? Do you, maybe economic can try to enlighten our viewers? Once they say economic, what are they meaning? Okay,
thank you so much. As I address the economic, but I will also wish to mention some few social aspects.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I must say that there's good progress in terms of refugee inclusion in the social fabric. However, of course, something that I must also bring to light is we need to also, as a refugee community, we need to embrace more of these social spaces we are talking about. It's not good, for instance, for refugees to have specific churches basically for refugees. You find that there is not even a single Kenyan within these churches. And vice versa, where you find that refugees cannot get into a Kenyan church and just, conduct their prayers and go. So I can say that at the social level, we are 100% there. Yeah. Of course, there's a lot of acceptance within our communities. Refugees go about their businesses. Refugees do their weddings, ceremony and birthday parties without, the host communities interfering. But I think as much as we are going through with this, we need to have more host communities interact and taking part in these social activities and vice versa. Yeah. We live so much with refugees within Kasarani. There are so many refugees in Kangemi, for instance, Kawangware. So whenever these social activities are taking part, I think refugees should allow Kenyans to be part. And, there's that openness, there's that cohesion among refugee and host communities. So for the social aspect, we are not there yet, but we are hoping with this very many interventions.
But the move is a bit good.
Yeah, there's the acceptance. The thing is there's acceptance because we've not heard of any case where, hosts are attacking refugees in their social activities. We, of course, are hearing of cases where refugees are marrying hosts and vice versa. So I think for the social aspect, we are getting there. When it comes to the economic, first I will want to describe what economic means. Economic is the ability of refugees to take part in any income-generating activity without really not being discriminated or taking part in any income-generating activity freely and in a way that dignifies their dignity as people. Talking of economic means I can wake up in the morning, go seek for a job somewhere, and I'll be able to be employed and be paid equally just as any other Kenyan is being employed. That is all about economic inclusion. Economic inclusion means me as a refugee, I can always wake up, start my own business, and have Kenyans get the services that I'm providing equally just like any other Kenyan. That is all about economic. At the end of the day, how is a refugee able to, rely upon themselves, to meet their day-to-day needs. So that it's not about, the notion here outside is that refugees are a recipient of humanitarian aid. Refugees are donor dependent. And that is not the notion. The notion is we are supposed to create, the resilience and reliance among themselves as refugees so that they're able to, take part in the day-to-day livelihood options. They're able to also adapt to the, Kenya bucket. They're also able to adapt to, even the tax collection. They're able to adapt to our revenue collection system.
Because it's a law in Kenya, and as we have said, they have to adhere to the law.
Exactly. They're obligated to pay taxes. They have to pay taxes, So then it is about enabling them to partake all these activities so that at the end of the day, they are reliant upon themselves. But again, they're also adding up to the, the gross domestic product of the nation. So you asked whether are we there yet in terms of economic inclusion. I must say we are not there, just as the social inclusion, because we are seeing so much exclusion, discrimination when it comes to refugee access to, these economic opportunities. Refugees are trying so hard to establish their own businesses at small scale level. But again, you see the kind of harassment we are seeing from the local enforcement officers is very wanting. A lot of harassment, a lot of extortion of money because they know some of the refugees maybe are lacking the proper document to even partake these activities. So then it is about extortion.
They take advantage.
They're taking advantage of the situation, and that is something that we are trying to call out, and we're trying to say that the government should intervene. How? By providing refugees the necessary documents that will now enable them partake businesses legally.
Yeah, like business permit.
Like for instance, business permits. KRA pins. Some maybe this certificate maybe to even conduct their businesses because every business has its own kind of certificate. So then refugees should be enabled to acquire this document so that they can take part in economic activities freely without being interfered with. When it comes to employment, we know there's a very wanting level of discrimination. People are hesitant to employ refugees in their companies, for instance. The question is, I'll employ a refugee here today and maybe bestow him with a particular role, but again, how am I sure that tomorrow I'll see this person? Maybe they'll come today, we build trust among the refugees, but again, they disappear. So those are the kind of fears that people are having. But again, we are trying to say that with the necessary documents for the refugees, if they're able to get working permits, then we are we are certain that even if I employ this refugee in my company, they can always be trusted with whatever role and whatever company, company wealth that we give them. So when it comes to economic, I must say that we are not yet there.
Opening bank accounts, it's still a problem.
It's still a huge problem. We understand that banks are still hesitant to provide refugees with accounts. But again, recently the government gazetted these documents, and we are hoping that now even the private sector, both the public and the private sector, are able to accept these documents and even accept documents, recognize these documents, and allow refugees to take part. Because, for instance, if a refugee is not able to have a bank account, then it means they are not able to get employment.
Even M-Pesa, let's go. The M-Pesa is the easiest banking system, online banking system that people. It's still a problem. How comes the bank?
I know refugees are still having big challenges in terms of access to M-Pesa, but I must report that from last month, the refugees have started receiving M-Pesa account. I don't know whether BORTOPRA TV is aware of this, but we've started receiving a lot of testimonies of refugees being able to access M-Pesa account. And I think this is thanks to the gazettement that happened end of last year. Okay. The government gazetted these documents, so then I think M-Pesa have now, the Safaricom company has now agreed to provide. But again, the reason why I must also say this, because it is good for it to be out there in the public, that the government does not wake up one day and decide that today we are not going to provide refugees with M-Pesa account and even bank accounts. There's a reason to that, why there have been a lot of challenges. And the reason to that is because of, national security. Because sometimes back, it was a threat to the national security, because it was purported that some of the refugees getting into Kenya are using these platforms to transact terrorism, to fund terrorism activities. So then you see the government has to take precautions, and national security comes first in any agenda. So according to the intelligence services, or reports that some of the refugees, especially on the other side, northern Kenya, were using these platforms to transact money used to, facilitate terrorism activities. So that's when, there were these restrictions, and that government decided to halt, the process of providing accounts. But I think now over time, government have learned that not everyone is up to that intention, and that a lot of them are here genuinely, and that there's a need for the government to facilitate the access to these documents. And I must report, and I still insist, that up to last month, refugees have started receiving, M-Pesa accounts.
Okay, if it has reached that level, let's appreciate the government.
Yeah, we have to appreciate.
As long as we advocate for things that are not yet established, we have also to appreciate for the small or the big achievements
that have been made. Yeah.
Evans, I know challenges are many.
Yeah.
But also, I think you have also something you can share. You can say or share about refugee resilience. Despite all those challenges, despite odds, there are refugees who are making a great impact.
Exactly, and I must mention that number one, refugees are human beings. So we have to attend to them as human, not as a refugee first.
A refugee is a status.
A refugee is just a status. And I must mention that it's usually a temporary status, because even the ID is expiring after 5 years.
I do tell people that a refugee is a status. It's not a profile. Like if you have interacted with WhatsApp, a status changed after 24 hours. But a profile, unless you change.
Yeah, exactly. So a refugee status is a temporary status. Yes. So people should not view refugees as destitute and that people who do not have a future. Refugees have huge future.
Skills and potential.
Skills and all that. That is number one. Number two, refugees are here with us in Kenya. And we are talking about, currently we have a lot of movements, and so we have a lot of global movements around borderless countries. And again, we also have the African free trade area. All those are vehicles that are trying to push the agenda of free movement of people, borderless countries and all that, borderless economic opportunities. And all that. So if refugees are here with us, then it means we automatically have to embrace them. Because if we don't embrace them now, then we will obviously embrace them when these movements come to suffice, come to realization.
We embrace them early.
So we should embrace them early so that as much as we are still addressing the issue of African free trade area, we are already practicing it. That is one. I must say that refugees come with a lot of opportunity. Countries like South Africa, for instance, have those are cosmopolitan countries, and with that status, it has made the country grow economically.
Like the Western countries that are settling refugees.
A lot of refugees. And for America, for instance, 15% of the population in America is made of immigrants, and that's why the nation is where it is, because now there's a lot of workforce
diversity.
There's a lot of diversity. Skills are coming in from different areas, and if you look at even America, most athletes in America is usually black people, black people that have decided to be Americans. So we don't have a choice. We have to embrace people for the economic well-being of a nation, you see. You asked a question about what refugees, the resilience in refugees. I must say refugees are resilient so much. For instance, in Kenya, we know that Congolese are people who do very good tailoring work. So a lot of even the big shops in town that are doing tailoring, most of them are owned or run by refugees. People who make kitenge in Kenya, most of kitenge that are made in our weddings and these parties and celebrations are usually made by Congolese.
Their music skills are loved all over.
The Lingala of Congo is forever something in our country that we cannot ignore, you see. So refugees, and you see even in the work they do, when you look at their small scale business they are running, they're so friendly. They know how, they have good customer relation skills, so they can always handle people in a way that a customer should handle. Compared to a Kenyan who sometimes could be, rude to a customer, and you know very well that a customer is a king. So anyone who gives a customer that status of a king, then will always win the interest of the customer. So and I think personally, Congolese, for instance, Burundians have these skills to a big extent, and I think this has made them. Have made even their business prosper in a small period of time.
So we have to tap into all those potential.
We have to tap into all these things. However, what I know is sometimes Kenyans feel that this is a threat to them, because a Kenyan will say, you are taking all my customers. And then they'll start pointing and victimizing and saying, you Congolese, why are you taking our people? We need to take you back to your country. But again, I think that one brings the aspect again of awareness creation. That it's not about the Congolese, it's about how you handle your business. If you can't manage your business in a way that is supposed to be managed,
ask yourself why they go to that person.
Exactly, why they go. Sometimes back in Kasarani there are complaints that Kenyans are buying tomatoes from refugees and not fellow Kenyans. But again, when you dig deeper, you'll realize first the tomatoes sold by the Congolese are cheaper. They are cheaper, and then secondly, these Congolese are coming to sell these tomatoes at your doorstep. So as a Kenyan vendor who's selling tomatoes waiting for customers in his kibanda or in the market, a refugee takes the step to bring this commodity in your doorstep. So which one will you take? They have
taught them a lesson.
Exactly.
You have to use different techniques to
exactly sell. Sure, you have to take some extra you have to just take some extra enticing moves for
and also I think maybe for refugees it's because they didn't have a space to put their maybe sometimes a problem cause you to find a solution
actually a problem usually leads to a solution because most of refugees they don't assess market spaces, and this is something that also Pamoja Trust is trying to push. That we have refugees assess market spaces so that they're equally able to sell their commodities at ease. But again, I realize that one is actually a problem solver. Now because I can't find a space market, then why not follow these customers to their house?
The market is, I make the market wherever I am.
So the market, I can always get the market at my own convenience.
I think also that's where the online selling online, the way it comes, because you order online, they
Yeah, like Glovo, for instance, in Glovo you order online and it is right at your doorstep. So that is a thing. And I think with that, as Kenyans, instead of seeing that as a competition, we should see it as an opportunity to enlarge your skill, you see? So that, you see, if this person is doing this, then maybe for me, I can do that twice and even improve in something like efficiency, the time at which I deliver the products and all that. So it's an opportunity. What I know is Kenyans are seeing refugees as competitors within the market because refugees are selling their products cheaper and are of course more convenient. They're coming to your location. Kenyans are seeing this as a challenge. So we've heard a lot of cries from communities pinpointing refugees as competitors and that are bad to their businesses. Yeah. But again, it's just about learning and accepting situation and also taking that not as a competition but as a challenge that you embrace.
Okay. So Evans, I know we can talk about many things, but as we are heading to wind about this conversation, I would like to ask you the final question for this moment, and also I'm hoping in time we will need you to come back on different issues because you are on the refugee ecosystem.
Yeah.
You understand much about refugees, and also you are a Kenyan.
Yeah.
As we wind this session, I want to ask you one question, then we wind.
Okay.
What message would you like to give to Kenyans? Okay. And what message would you like to give to refugees?
Number one, as I give messages to these people, I also want to mention the strides that have been made in integration efforts. First, efforts that have been made by the government, and strides that have been made by organizations, and the strides that have been made by communities, both refugee and host. So for government, for instance, in Nairobi County, the Nairobi County government, I think, has done quite a lot. And we know that government's processes are usually so bureaucratic. But in a small span of time, the government is doing quite a lot, Nairobi County government. Number one, it allowed refugee, registration of business permits. I know that is still a challenge to some of the refugees. They are not able to access the business registration platform, but it's good to mention that refugees are now able to register the platform. The platform recognizes refugee documents and that refugees can usually register their businesses. That is number one. Number two, Nairobi County has even developed a department, a directorate that is head and is specifically addressing refugee issues. I think that's a big up that we need to give to the Nairobi County government, and credit should always be given where it's due. Having that directorate on refugees then means here in the near future, these refugee issues, refugee services can always be, coordinated from this office. Previously, it is only the national government that has such a department, but now Nairobi County is embracing that by now forming the directorate on refugee issues. Thirdly, Nairobi County specifically is developing a strategy paper on integration and community development, which I think it's in its final stages, and that is a very comprehensive and profound document that is going to address a lot of refugee issues, especially in areas of areas of economic, and service rights, service provision. The document is speaking so much on how refugee issues can be addressed. Of course, there are those mandates that are not lying within the confines of Nairobi, of the county government, especially documentation, for instance. Those are roles of the national government. But now these other things like, access to health services, access to market spaces, access to access to this business permits, access to these social security like the NHIF. Those ones are within the confines of the county government. Of course, inclusion of refugee issues within the CIDP processes. And I must mention that even the Nairobi County Integrated Development Plan for 2022-2027 has the component of refugees. It actually adopted some issues on refugees, and it is included in the plan. In terms of course, it has been indicated as vulnerable groups, but it was intentionally to address refugee issues. So that document, if you look at it, it has components of refugee, and that is something that has never happened, something of a kind. When you look to the organization, I think now a lot of organizations are starting to embrace refugee issues. So first, I talked of the county government, and the second now is the milestones that have been made by the grassroots entities and even organizations. For instance, when you come to Kasarani, we have the social justice guys who are now addressing refugee harassment, gender-based violence issues. At least now they are starting to realize that refugees are here with us and they are equally human beings and we need to address their concerns. When you go to Githurai, for instance, there's the Leak Empowerment CBO. Previously, it was not addressing anything, any matters refugee, but now it is developing programs around literacy, financial literacy and computer literacy programs that are targeting refugee youths. So with time, we see even the grassroots entities and NGOs are now starting to pick refugee issues as a programmatic area, and they are developing interventions around that. Because refugees are here with us, they are occupying our informal settlements, and their concerns need to be addressed. For instance, in Pamoja Trust currently, Pamoja Trust was initiated in 1998. All those years, now we are headed to 24 years. For the past 19 years, we've been operating singly on, looking into the host communities living within the informal settlement. But for the past 4 years now, you'll never find a single meeting that Pamoja Trust is doing that lacks refugee. All our meetings, community meetings and community sensitization programs within Nairobi must be having refugees sitting in that particular. So I think these are little but very critical milestones that needs to be addressed. When it comes to community, at community level, now at least we can say, like for instance, the case of Kasarani, we have refugees who can even command host activities. They sit in chiefs' barazas and address some of the issues. When you go to Kangware, for instance, we have refugee and host network known as Umoja Tunaweza, where they engage the local chief, and the local chief is aware of the existence and they work collaboratively. They've had a lot of tree planting activities within Kangware. And that is both refugee and host, something that never used to happen, because we know previously refugees used to stay in isolation and hidings, staying in their respective homes without wanting to engage in these things that are happening within communities. But that is now not the case. When you go to Kibra, for instance, in toy market, refugees are working within the market. They can assess market spaces. Of course, we know there are so many challenges, but they are able now to assess market spaces within toy market, for instance. If you go to Kangemi, we have refugees taking part in public finance management processes. They take part in these public participation conversations to address some of the issues that are arising. You see, so those are milestones that have been made. Refugees are coming out to take part in this, these activities that are happening within our communities. If you go to Mukuru, for instance, we are having refugees sitting down with the OCS to just air out their issues, so that the OCS and the local, administration can understand refugee issues. So these are milestones that are made that I think need to also be recognized. So you've told me to a message to the host. So number one, I just need to emphasize that the host community should view refugees as human beings, and we should stop this behavior of discriminating refugees on basis of their nationality. And
anyone can be a refugee at any time.
Anyone can be a refugee at any time.
And no one chooses
to be a refugee. And refugee status is not a permanent status. Recently, we had floods in Kenya. And floods ravaged the entire country. There are people who stay in Lunga border, for instance, back in Kwale, who, by any chance, if the floods ravage that area, they could now rush into Tanzania and they will automatically be refugees. There are people who stay in Busia border, for instance. The people who are staying in Busia border could succumb to the whatever kind of conflict that will arise, or even the floods. They could get into Uganda as a rescue country. There are people who stay in Namanga border. Whatever happens in Namanga border, having that it has the Kilimanjaro, it's near the Kilimanjaro mountain, any calamity can take place in Namanga border because of the Kilimanjaro. That will automatically mean that they rush into Tanzania as asylum seekers.
In short, anyone can be a refugee.
Anyone can be a refugee. Like for instance, in 2007, there was so much conflict in Kenya. People fled. We had so many internally displaced people. So Kenyans, number one, should embrace refugees as human beings and should understand that they can be refugees anytime, especially with this political temperature we are seeing in Kenya currently. You never know. Anything can happen. So Kenyans, my plea to you is that you need to embrace refugees in whatever situation you find them, so that whatever you do to someone today, you'll want this someone to do similarly to you in the next life or in tomorrow. That is number one. Then secondly, they are here with us. We need to embrace them. We have no option. We can't say that now today as a Kenya we are waking up and saying we do away with all the 629 refugees we have. No, we need to embrace them, because apart from them being refugees, there are those benefits that are bringing to a country, especially in terms of economic. That's the economic value that they come with as refugees in Kenya. So we need to embrace them. And then thirdly, Kenyans, you need to understand that we are going global and that everything is globalized. So we need to embrace people from different nationality, because now everything, the globe is a small village. We have no option. We can't say now we are confining ourselves in Kenya because we want to be Kenyans. No. We have to embrace the Indians. We have to embrace people from North America and South America. We need to embrace people from different countries.
The same way they will embrace you once you
exactly.
go in their country.
Yeah, sure. And we should understand that we have Kenyans in many parts of this country. In America, for instance, we have Kenyans in Texas. There's so many in Texas and California. So whatever we are doing to people from outside is the same thing that our Kenyan brothers and sisters are going through in the other sides. So we as Kenyans, let's embrace refugees, let's address the issues, let's understand what refugees are going through. Because if you get to know what refugees are going through, you'll really see the need of tackling refugee issues with a lot of caution and a lot of humanity. And then there's this one notion that I need to put in as I give my final comments on to my host communities, is that refugees are not getting any money from anyone. There's this notion that refugees are being funded by the United Nations. No, that is a lie. Refugees who are getting a lot of support are the refugees that are living in Kakuma and Dadaab, the two big camps we have. And Kakuma is one of the biggest camps even in Africa. Those are the refugees that are receiving support, relief support from the various donor organizations.
Few one, not all the main ones.
And it's the few one depending on your situation and circumstance.
Yes.
So I need to tell Kenyans that the refugees that are living within the urban spaces, within Nairobi, within Nakuru, within Mombasa, there is no single coin that these people receive from any person. The only interventions are there. Maybe organization will say today maybe we are going to distribute food to people who are vulnerable. They will give equally everyone. But no single refugee living in the urban area is given money,
certain amount of
money to take care of. No. The only things are there are in governmental interventions just to enable them do business just as any other Kenyan. Governmental interventions to just enhance their skills in tailoring, enhance their skill in cooking and all that. But kuna refugee anapewa pesa. No refugee is being given any money. So the way you are surviving as a Kenyan is the same way a refugee is surviving. And for him or her, it's even worse because they don't have access to documents. They are being harassed. They are being excluded in spaces. They are being discriminated a lot. So we should help them instead of castigating them and calling them names. So for my Kenyan friends and families, please let's embrace these people. For the refugees,
yes,
I would like to say that it's high time we stop living in fear. We stop living in isolation. And we embrace the Kenyan society as it is. Let's not live in hiding and say, I'm a refugee, so I have to. And we're seeing this a lot with Burundians in Mukuru, for instance. They're living in hiding. And then you realize that when it comes to, in the evening, that's when they come out to work because they think now at that time they won't meet police, they won't meet any person, maybe the government officers or enforcement officers. They come out from their houses in the evening. So then it becomes hard to know whether this is a genuine person or is a thug who wants to, harm
the country.
So we are telling refugees not to live in fear and not to live in hiding, because that one makes you more vulnerable to such other things. Because one day someone will say, we know there's quite a number of refugees living in this house. They've been hiding here inside. We want to know what they usually do. So they can come in there and lynch you people and even set fire on you. And we've had such scenarios before. So we're telling refugees to come out, engage with local people, engage with the Kenyans, go to their churches, invite them into your churches,
do business together.
Do business together and invest in partnerships. Like currently, We are trying to, Pamoja Trust is trying to establish SACCOs, social, not savings and credit cooperatives that have both refugees and hosts. And the SACCOs, you realize that the executive of these SACCOs are actually made of refugees and hosts. So you have a chairman as a host, maybe a secretary as a refugee, a treasurer as a refugee. And that is something one of a kind, because such a thing has never happened. So we are saying, even if it's a self-help group, refugees be part of these self-help groups. If it's a SACCO, refugee take part in this savings and credit schemes. To enable you access credit cheaply.
Any other message as we close?
Finally, I think the government needs to up its game in terms of refugee issues, so that we now get to another level from where we are at of documentation. Documentation is a very big challenge that refugees are having, and I can't end my conversation without saying that it's a huge challenge that refugees are still having. But the government should up its game in terms of providing, refugee IDs. These are the many documents that refugees are supposed to be having. The government should fast track that, so that at the end of the day, we enable refugees resiliency. We enable refugees to take part freely in our economic and social activities without them experiencing whatever they're experiencing currently. So I would like to urge the government that we need to, bolster those interventions. Thank you.
Okay, Evans, I would like to appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Your contribution. I think our viewers have gained more about what we have discussed. I don't want to go back on any of the things you have spoken, but we really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
And our viewers, please go on the comment section, say something. Maybe there are things you are not aware. Today you have learned something. Or there are maybe many things you still need to be, you need more clarification and awareness. Please go in the comment, drop your comment, whatever it looks. I know you will get more answers. And Evans, thank you so much, and we appreciate Pamoja Trust for the contribution. 4 years as you included refugees in your services. But you are doing a great and amazing job.
Thank you so much.
So I hope next time, if we want you to come back, because you are Pamoja Trust is part of the first organization that came on the camera to share about it. Because many, and also I want to take this time to encourage other organizations, service providers from different institutions, come out. This platform is here just to make sure refugees and hosts are getting the proper informations, are being directed into the right direction. So don't feel we are here to hotspot you. So nothing bad for whatever you are doing. So I would like also to encourage other organizations to come in, share whatever you do. Let refugee also have light, mwangaza. For us, right and light, the pronunciation of R and L, it's a challenge. But come, let's people understand, have more information, because information is power. Some of the refugees and the hosts are not, are some quiet, not doing things the way it's supposed to, because they don't have information, they don't have directions and whatever. But I'm hoping BORTOPRA TV, we have come on the right time, and the talk is on the move. I hope many things will be elaborated on this platform. Thank you so much, Evans. Thank you so much, our viewers. My name is Eric Museveni Rugambwa, the host, and this is BORTOPRA TV, where refugee matters are discussed.